why do relationships fail? A lot of times I feel like people try to depend on someone else to fill a void in their life, right? It's like you might be lonely, you might be, whatever void that you have, and we think it takes another person to complete us. And I talked about this a lot throughout the years, and I believe it's true. I don't think a person should complete you. And I know that sounds crazy, but I don't think that's true. I think when you're dependent on a person to complete you, that means that you aren't completely whole. That means that it's avoiding your life, right? It might still be an insecurity of your past. It might be, things you haven't dealt with, and you're dependent on that person to fill that spot. I think that you should come complete. I think that you should work on who you are, understand who you are, and you guys add to each other's completeness. Another thing that I saw that I want to touch on is lack of communication. I think that's very, very important. And I want to be clear about this, not just communication, right? Of course, we have the word communication. You can have communication in a terrible way. But I feel like when you take it a step deeper, right? We talk about lack of communication. But what I think that's even more important than lack of communication is lack of connection. And for me, connection is a deeper form of communication. Connection means that in that communication, you're 100% attentive to what that person is saying, right? You don't have your phone out. You're not distracted by the TV. I feel like we don't have enough undivided attention communication, which leads to connection. And, I feel like social media, I feel like technology is making that very hard for people to really be connected. A lot of times it's the phone that we're on, right? We're spending time on our phone. We're spending time, scrolling. We're spending time on social media and things like that. So I think it's about connection. And where you don't have connection, right, there's no power. And it's like the analogy I use is always like plugging something in, like I can't illuminate the darkness without a connection. And so I feel like in relationships, a lot of times it is lack of communication, because communication is big, but even deeper, it's lack of connection. There's a void in the relationship, right? And that void doesn't just disappear, but that void from lack of communication is filled with assumptions, right? It's filled with, it's filled with assumptions. And you start to assume like, oh, what is this person doing? Or this person doesn't love me or whatever. And then assumptions are terrible in relationships, because usually assumptions, they may be right at times, but usually they're wrong. And a lot of people build their whole relationship off of assumptions because they don't communicate with each other, don't connect with each other. And so the question I want to ask people in relationships, or if you're not in a relationship, like, when's the last time you had like no distraction connection? No distraction connection. With not worried about anything else. When's the last time you talked about like goals with each other? When's the last time you talked about like each other's goals? Like, I see that so many times in my relationship. I try to make it a point to make sure that I listen to my wife's goals, to make sure that I bring her goals out of her, to make sure that she knows that I support her. And what I mean by support, not just, being there for her, but also letting her know that I'm super interested in the things that excite her. I'm super interested in her growing, in her meeting her potential, because in a relationship, when that other person is thriving, is, when they have a goal to reach, when they're growing, when they're meeting their potential, it's incredible. It makes the relationship better. And I don't, when I talk to people about their relationships all the time, like, I feel like that's one of the main things that's missing. Like, they never talk about, they just live life. Like, it's like the Matrix. Every single day is just a routine. And when you get in a routine in your relationship, I feel like that's, one of many things that cause a relationship to fail, because it becomes boring, right? There's no excitement. There's nothing new, right? It's the same old, and you're not excited. If a person doesn't want to communicate, your relationship will fail. I can just be real with you. It'll fail at some point, or it won't be fulfilled. It'll be miserable. You won't be happy. Okay. And this takes knowing the person that you're with, right? Like, how do they respond, right? How can I communicate effectively with that person? Like, there's ways to communicate with me. That's just me. And everybody is different when it comes to relationships. So the first thing I would do is I would show appreciation to that person. I would let that person know, because a lot of times when we try to communicate with our significant other, we attack them. And when a person is being attacked, you know what? They become defensive, period. It's the human nature. If you feel attacked, you're going to become defensive. So if you want to communicate or place a concern, like, make sure the environment promotes that, right? Make sure they don't feel like they're being attacked. And so how I would talk to that person, I would go to them with appreciation. This is any conversation with me, for anybody. I will go to them in appreciation, right? To let them know, like, here, I'm not here to attack you. I'm not here to bring you down. But I want to let you know how much I appreciate you as a person. Let's go.